Okay, so the first thing we need to talk about is, remember back when we did, so we're focusing on number 1 right now. So part 1, okay? Remember when we just got off of Unit 3, which is functions, and we talked about rate of change, okay? So the first thing I want you to think about is I gave you a graph, I gave you a scenario, I said it's snowing, and it's snowing at a rate of 3 inches per hour, okay? It's really coming down, okay? That would be the rate of change, right? So if I gave you a table of values, and this was the time, and this was the amount of inches of snow at 0 hours, let's say it was noon. At noon, there was no snow on the ground. At 1 p.m., there were 3 inches on the ground. At 2 p.m., so do you see how you were able to find the rate of change from that easily, right? You said for every hour, 3 more inches of snow is on the ground, so my rate of change is 3, right? Okay? So when you're given a table, we refer to it as rate of change. So what you may or may not know from last year or remember is that rate of change is actually the exact same thing as slope. Okay? And slope doesn't really have much to do with stories or anything else. It's just lines on a paper or lines on a graph. What's the slope of the line? Okay, we refer to it as rate of change when there's some fancy story that goes with it. Okay, and I don't know if you remember yesterday I told you that the letter M we use to represent slope. Does anybody remember why? What that is? Did I explain it to you, or was that my? So that the French word monter means to climb, right? Okay, and that has to do with the word slope. Okay. So, I'm not sure if we did talk about this yesterday or not, but there are 4 kinds of slope. Does anybody remember? I can't remember if this was second hour or fifth hour I did this with. 4 kinds of slope. So, if I were to say to you, is that slope going up or down? Some people may say up, some people may say down, and some say both. But there's only one of those answers that's correct. So, and then I asked you to think about how do you read a book. When you read a book, you start, at least in English, from the left-hand side, and you read the words from left to right, correct? Okay, so that's the same way that we read a line. So I want to find the point farthest to the left on the line and start there. And then sometimes it's easy to think about like this little man here. So if this little man, is he going up a hill or down a hill? He's going up, right? So he needs hiking boots, not skis. Okay, so if he's going up on a coordinate plane represents positive values, right? So this is where one of my colorings is going to come in. I'm going to use positive slope for up. Okay, so this guy needs some boots. So that line does not go down, that line goes up. And it's not both either, because the people who say both say, well, if you start here, it goes down. If you start here, it goes up. You don't start there. You start here. So if I start here, this guy needs some skis on, right? Because he's going downhill. So this is actually going down from left to right. And what type of value do we use to represent down on a coordinate plane? Negative. So every single time you see a line that goes down from left to right, you will tell me that it is a negative slope, correct? Okay, what's this guy need on his feet to cruise around there? Shoes. He just needs some shoes. He needs some nice walking shoes or some jogging shoes because he's not climbing up, he's not going down, he's just walking straight. And what kind of number is neither positive nor negative? 0. It's neutral, right? So do you remember from rate of change and all those graphs we did? Whenever you had a horizontal line, you always told me that the rate of change was 0, didn't you? Okay? So this we're going to say is a horizontal line is 0. Okay? We're not going to write the word horizontal. It's just that when the lines are horizontal, you need to tell me every single time that the slope is 0. M equals 0. Okay? All right, there's only one other kind of line we haven't talked about yet. I have a positive, a negative, a 0, and then I got this. So the first thing about this is if I were to say to you, where's the farthest point to the left on this line? You would be like, I don't know. Everything is to the farthest left. And everything's to the farthest right. There is no far left, right? Okay? So this guy doesn't have any idea where to start. He doesn't know if he starts here and tries to ski down that hill, he's going to be in some trouble, right? Probably a few broken bones. If he tries here to walk up it, that's not happening either. So nothing about this line makes any sense, does it? Okay? And I don't know if we talked about this yesterday or not, but when things don't make sense in math, there's a word that we use. It's kind of funny. It's called undefined. So I want you to think about what defined means. Like in Spanish or science, you have definitions sometimes. Like you have to go to the back of the book in the glossary and write out the definition. The definition means that the word is defined. Undefined means it doesn't even earn a definition. Think about it. So the definition of undefined means there is no definition. Does that sound? So here's what you're going to write for this. If I ask you what's the slope of this line, positive, negative, 0, the actual word you will write for this slope is the whole word undefined. Okay? So that slope is undefined. Every single time you see a vertical line, you will write that. Okay? So let's write vertical. Okay? Those are your 4 kinds of slopes. So there may be a day where I just draw a bunch of lines on the paper and say, hey, is this positive, negative, 0, or undefined? And you have to be able to tell me. Okay? Now, once we talk about that, there's different kinds of slopes, right? So aren't both of these slopes positive? Yeah, but they're different what? Also begins with S. They're different steepnesses, right? So like if this was a hill, which one would you rather walk up? Which one would be easier to walk up? This one. Or anybody going on the ski trip after we get back from Christmas break? There's the hill that goes like this, and there's a hill that goes like this. I know which one I would rather go on, but this is steeper, right? Okay, what are they? Is it the black hill or the black slopes or the black diamond? Or yeah, okay, yeah. So each, in addition to there being 4 different kinds of slopes, each slope has different steepnesses, and that's what we want to talk about today. All we're talking about, like think about steepnesses, like of roofs and stuff. Like when you go home, look at the steepness of your roof. Is it really, really steep? Is it kind of like this? Why do you think out west in some of the warmer climates that they have like those flat roof houses? Think about it. Architects need to know slope when they build houses. Snow. When it snows, what do we want the snow to do? Fall off. We don't want it sitting on our roof and making our roof cave in. Is there snow in Mexico and Arizona? No. So that's okay for them to have those kind of adobe-like houses, right? So slope is everywhere. Look at the slope of your roof when you get home, okay? So 4 kinds of slopes. So let's get to the first part, because that was all kind of a little introduction. So I want to know how to find the slope from an equation. And I may have showed you this yesterday. I want you to write y equals mx plus b. And then I want you to darken in the y and the x. Okay? Because that, in slope-intercept form, that doesn't go anywhere. Okay? So we already know that when y is by itself, because if y is not by itself, then it's not in slope-intercept form. So learning target 1, part 1, if I give you an equation, can you tell me what the slope is? Okay? If I give you an equation, hello, just go ahead and grab that. Can you tell me what the slope is? Well, as long as y is by itself and the coefficient of x is your slope, isn't it? According to that, isn't m stand for slope? If it's the coefficient of x, then your slope is 2. And it's literally a piece of cake like that, isn't it? Okay? So like if I say y equals negative 1/2 x, what's your slope? Right? Let's get a little trickier. y equals x minus 6. So what would your slope be for this one? M would equal what? You don't see anything, but you've been taught to remember that when there's nothing there in front of the x, the coefficient is really 1. So wouldn't you tell me the slope for that is 1? If that's the case, then what would you tell me the slope is for this equation? -1, right? Autumn, will you shut that door, please? So here the slope is -1. Okay, that's too easy. Let's try to trick you. Oops. Y equals 7. You're going to see ones like this pop up, and here's what you need to know. Do you see an x anywhere? So is it kind of the same as like having 0 x's? Does that help? So what is the coefficient of x? 0. So what is your slope? 0. When's the last time you ever saw 0x though? Never. And you'll never see it, except for me using it as a kind of a teaching strategy here. So do you kind of see when you don't see the x that you need to know that it's 0? And what kind of line has a slope of 0? A horizontal, right? We have to keep those straight, horizontal and vertical. 0 slope is this. Do you know what? That's going to be your equation, y equals 7. Just kind of a little heads up there. Okay, so are you okay with that? All right. However, what's the slope here? If you were half listening, you may say 3. Because isn't that the number in front of x? So you got half of it right. It's the number in front of x, but only when y is by itself. And luckily, I already taught you how to solve an equation for a specific variable, right? So, do you remember basically what you'll have to do is solve that equation for y first? So let's go ahead and do that together. First thing you need to know, please listen, is that your division is last. So don't divide by 2 first. You have to do order of operations in reverse. So you are subtracting 3x first, right? So that's going to give you 2y equals. Now, right here, you have a choice and a decision to make. Normally, you would probably just put it like that. However, and that's totally okay, but slope-intercept form is the x and then the y-intercept. So you'll always see me kind of put it like this. You'll see why in a minute. So now when I divide both sides by 2, I got a little fixing to do here. This just means take each of these terms and divide it by 2. So what's 8 divided by 2? And what's negative 3x over 2? It's just negative 3x, negative 3 halves x. Don't make it mixed. Improper is totally fine. If you did it this way, then your answer kind of already looks like it's in the right order, right? There is no right or wrong order, but aren't we kind of used to seeing this at the end, that's kind of our beginning, that's the B, that's the M? So after all that, the question is, what's the slope of this line? You have to now be able to say what? Negative 3 halves. And when you're telling me what the slope is, you don't include the x. It's just the coefficient. Got it? Okay, bless you. That was the cutest little sneeze ever. So, learning target number 1. I can find the slope from an equation. Jack, can you? Yes? Okay. So let's move on to learning target number 2, or actually part 2. Okay? So go ahead and